Welcome to Yerba Mate Talks.
Hey y'all, doing a quick little read and reflect during my interim at the stage production. So this is gonna be a cool little quick bite. I'm doing the Ramayana production. I'm playing King Janak. So see my cool outfit. So we're gonna do a quick read here. The mutation of Salahuddin Chamchawala into Salahuddin Chamcha. Oops. Began, it will be seen in old Bombay long before he got close enough to hear the lions of Trafalgar roar. When the England cricket team played India at the Brabourne Stadium, he prayed for an England victory, for the stadium's creators to defeat the local upstarts, for the proper order of things to be maintained. But the games were invariably drawn, owing to the featherbed somnolence of the Brabourne Stadium wicket. The great issue, creator versus imitator, colonizer against colonized, had a performance to remain unresolved. In his 13th year, he was old enough to play on the rocks at Scandal Point without having to be watched over by his Aya Kasturba. And one day it was so, it was not so. He strolled out of the house, that simple crumbling salt-caked building, in the Parsi style, all columns and shutters, and little balconies, and through the garden that was his father's pride and joy, and which, in a certain evening, light could give the impression of being infinite, and which was also enigmatic, an unsolved riddle, because nobody, not his father, not the gardener, could tell him the names of the most of the plants and trees. And out through the main gateway, a grandiose folly, a reproduction of the Roman triumphal arch, the Septimus Severus, and across the wild insanity of the street, and over the seawall, and so at last on the broad expanse of shiny black rocks, with their little shrimpy pools, Christian girls giggled in frocks, men with furled umbrellas stood silent and fixed upon the blue horizon. In a hollow of black stone, Salahuddin saw a man in a dhoti. A dhoti is like a kind of a pants, sarong type of thing that men wear, bending over a pool. Their eyes met, and the man beckoned him with a single finger, which he then laid across his lips. Shh! And the mystery of the rock pools drew the boy towards the stranger. He was a creature of bone, spectacles framed. Hey, let's see, what are they? Spectacles framed in what may have been ivory, his finger curling like a baited hook. Come. When Saladin came down, the other grasped, put a hand around his mouth, and forced his young hand between old and fleshless legs to feel the flesh bone there. The dhoti opened to the winds. Saladin had never known how to fight. He did what he was forced to do, and when the others simply turned away from him and let him go. After that, Salahuddin never went to the rocks at Scandal Point, nor did he tell anyone what had happened, knowing the neurasthenic crisis it would unleash in his mother, and suspecting that his father would say it was his own fault. It seemed to him that everything loathsome, everything he had to come to revile about his hometown, had come together in the stranger's bony embrace. And now he had escaped that evil skeleton. He must also escape Bombay, or die. He began to concentrate fiercely upon this idea, to fix his will upon it at all times, eating shitting, sleeping, convincing himself that he could make the miracle happen even without his father's lamp to help him out. He dreamed of flying out of his bedroom window, discovered that there below him was not Bombay, but proper London itself. Big Ben Nelson's column, Lord's Tavern, Bloody Tower Queen. But as he floated out over the great metropolis, he felt himself beginning to lose height, and no matter how hard he struggled, kicked, swam in air, he continued to spiral slowly downwards to earth, then faster still, until he was screaming head first down towards the city, St. Paul's, Pudding Lane, Threadneedle Street, zeroing in on London like a bomb. Bright light and brittle friends. When Salahuddin was a little boy, he had insisted on playing doorman, and would greet the jeweled and lacquered guests with great gravity, permitting them to pat him on the head and call him Cutso and Cutie Pie. On Fridays, the house was full of noise. There were musicians, singers, dancers, the latest Western hits as heard on Radio Ceylon, raucous puppet shows in which painted clay rajas rode puppet stallions, decapitating enemy marionettes with imprecations and wooden swords. During the rest of the week, however, Nasreen would stalk the house warily, a pigeon of a woman walking on tiptoed feet through the gloom as if she was afraid to disturb the shadowed silence, and her son, walking in her footsteps, also learned to lighten his footfall, lest the rouse whatever goblin or afreet might be lying in wait. But Nasreen Chumchawala's caution failed to save her life. The horror seized and murdered her when she believed herself most safe, clad in a sari, covered in cheap newspaper, photos and headlines, bathed in chandelier light, surrounded by her friends. By then, 5.5 years had passed since young Salahuddin garlanded and boarded a Douglas DC-8 and journeyed into the West ahead of him, England beside him, his father Genghis Chamchawala below him, home and beauty. Like Nasreen, the future Salahuddin had never found it easy to cry. On the first aeroplane, he read science fiction tales of interplanetary migration, Asimov's Foundation, Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles. He imagined the DC-8 was the mothership bearing the chosen, the elect of God, and man across unthinkable distances, traveling for generations, breeding eugenically that their seed might one day take root somewhere in a brave new world. Beneath a sun, a yellow sun, he corrected himself, not the mother, but the fathership, because there he was, after all, the great man, Abu, Dad, 13 years old, Salahuddin, setting aside recent doubts and grievances, entered once again his childish adoration of his father, because he had yet, because he had worshipped him. He was a great father until you started growing a mind of your own, and then to argue with him was called a betrayal of his love. But never mind that now. I accuse him of becoming my supreme being, so that what happened was like a loss of faith. Yes, the fathership, an aircraft, was not flying. Um, Then to argue with him was called a betrayal of love, but never mind that now. I accuse him of becoming my supreme being, so that what happened was like a loss of faith. Yes, the father's ship, an aircraft, was not a flying womb, but a metal phallus, and the passengers were spermatozoa waiting to be split. 5.5 hours of time zones. Turn your watch upside down in Bombay, And you see the time in London. My father, Chamcha, would think, years later, in the midst of his bitterness, I accuse him of inverting time. How far did they fly? 5,500, as the crow, or from the Indianness to Englishness, an immeasurable distance, or not very far at all, because they rose from one great city, fell to another. The distance between cities is always small. A villager traveling 100 miles to town, traverse emptier, darker, more terrifying space. What Genghis Chamchawala did when the aeroplane took off, trying not to let his son see him doing it, he crossed two pairs of fingers on each hand and rotated both his hands. And when they installed in a hotel within a few feet of the ancient location of the Tyburn tree, Genghis said to his son, Take this, take, this belongs to you, and held out an arm's length, a black billfold about whose identity there could be no mistake. You are a man now. Take the return of the confiscated wallet, complete with all its currency. Proved to be one of Genghis Chamchawala's little traps. Saladin had been deceived by these all his life. Whatever his father, whenever his father wanted to punish him, he would offer him a present, a bar of imported chocolate or a tin of Kraft cheese, and would then grab him when he came to get it. Um, Donkey, Changis scored his infant son. Always, always the carrot leads you to my stick. Salahuddin in London took the preferred wallet, accepting the gift of manhood, whereupon his father said, Now that you are a man, it is for you to look after your old father while we are in London town. You pay all the bills. January 1961, a year you could turn upside down. It would still, unlike your watch, tell the same time. It was winter. But when Salahuddin Chamchwala began to shiver in his hotel room, it was because he was scared halfway out of his wits. His crock of gold had turned suddenly into a sorcerer's curse. Those 2 weeks in London before he went to his boarding school turned into a nightmare of cash tills and calculations, because Jenkins had meant exactly what he had said and had never put his hand into his own pocket once. Saladin had to buy his own clothes, such as a double-breasted blue serge mackintosh and 7 blue and white striped Van Heusen shirts with detachable semi-stiff collars, which Genghis made him wear every day to get used to the studs. And Saladin felt as if a blunt knife were being pushed in just beneath his newly born Adam's apple, and he had to make sure there would be enough for the hotel room and everything, so that he was too nervous to ask his father if they could go to a movie. Not even one, not even the pure hell of St. Trinian's, or to eat out, not a single Chinese meal. And years later, he would remember nothing of the first fortnight in his beloved Elohim Dioan, except pounds of shillings pence, like the disciple of the philosopher King Chanakya, who asked for the great man what he meant by saying one could live the world and also not live in it, and who was told to carry a brimful pitcher of water through a holiday crowd without spilling a drop on pain of death, on pain of death, so that when he returned, he was unable to describe the day's festivities, having been like a blind man, seeing only a jug on his head. All right, friends, we are coming to the end, and you probably hear my Ramayana too. So we are learning more about Salahuddin Chamcha or Salahuddin Chamchawala. So this section we covered a lot about his story, as we had covered a lot about Ismail Najmuddin or Jibril Farishta's story. So now we will end. Thank you so much for coming, and we wish you a wonderful time in the next one. Let's see. Let us end right now.